Welcome to Full Scope, a podcast with two guys in their 20s, giving their perspective on the games that we love and the story behind it all. I'm your host, Williams Burns, along with my counterpart, Savon Morris. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. One of these days, we're gonna have a different intro.
You don't like the intro?
I do, but it's like I'm doing good, man. How are you?
It's just like it's becoming a little routine. Like, oh yeah, okay, I'll say I'm doing good, and Wellington will start the first time.
I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean to throw a curveball.
No, I mean that in this podcast we always want reinvention is the best thing, right? Reinventing ourselves, continually advancing this podcast. So listeners, if you have any feedback on a new intro, because apparently that's what we need. Apparently we need a new intro. Transitioning to the
I didn't mean it like that. Wait, I didn't mean it like that. I didn't mean it like that. I didn't mean it like that.
Look, I realize the co-host has very high holds very high weight in terms of feedback and little pointers that we can improve on. I come up with the top. This is the thing. I come up with the topics. Now you should come up with the intro. Is that fair?
That's definitely fair. Oh, look at the Pandora's box I opened up there.
I know.
Oh, man, I apologize, man.
Well, to start things off tonight, the Sixers had a resounding win against the Nets last night, 145 to 123. They had 51 points in the third, and after a controversial, possible flagrant 2 foul that could have been called on Embiid when he elbowed Jared Allen, that could have, it was like a 4-point game at that point in the second quarter, and that could have like significantly changed the course of that game, the outcome. And it compared to how they really struggled in the first game. Embiid saw 22 points, but and Butler had like 36, but Simmons was struggling a lot. And the shooting and the inconsistency there has been a big issue. But what were your thoughts overall on their game 2 win, and what are your thoughts on this series so far?
I thought it was a great bounce back for them, to be honest, man, because Brooklyn hit them in the mouth. First off, I know this was a big game. Scored 142 points. So it's like a huge game with no backcourt whatsoever.
And that's the thing. They do struggle against scoring guards like Dinwiddie and LeVert showed.
Exactly, and they kind of showed that in the first game with Dinwiddie and LeVert, and can't forget Russell, who was this monster of a team who came back, faced adversity, came in and started making buckets. But to come back and for you look at Ben Simmons play. I guess I'll start with him. The first game, he was not existent. He was not existent in that, because you see the best of him, you see the worst of him. He's better when he's on the run transition and on the front court. But when you make him create his own shot, that's where he struggles the most. And they always compare him to Magic Johnson.
Yeah,
both had success without creating their own shot, but Magic figured it out. But if Ben Simmons doesn't figure it out, then he's going to have these inconsistent games. But to go back, I thought Jimmy Butler played an outstanding game. Both games, actually. First game, he had 36 points. And,
kept them in the game.
It kept them in the game for the most part. In this game, he went off again. Everybody has to be on the same page. Everybody has. It's no other way around it. But to allow 142 points, gosh, man. When I saw the score, I was like, what? And that's what type of game the series is going to be. I don't think every night will be a high-scoring game, but it's who sets the pace. And this time, 76ers set the pace. The first game, of course, Brooklyn Nets set the pace. So I'm kind of eager to see who sets the pace. I want to give it to the Brooklyn Nets because I don't think they'll allow
for game 3.
142 points. Yeah, for game 3. I don't think they'll allow 142 points again. They have to figure out a way to shut Jimmy down. They know how to escalate Ben Simmons, take away the transition basketball for him, and make him create his own shot. He won't do it. Do not give him the lane. Make him create his own shot. Let Joel Embiid do what he does, but you have to keep the wraps around Jimmy. Jimmy is the guy who's keeping this team alive. He is the heart and soul of it. So you have to keep Jimmy under wraps. I know it's gonna be a big task for them, but I think they can handle it. They did it the first game, kind of, but they have to keep Jimmy under wraps. But sheesh, Jimmy went off.
Yeah,
Jimmy had a game.
Yeah, and this Nets team, like when you compare them to the size of Philly, they're undersized and obviously less talented. And if you look ahead, like if they're playing like a team like Milwaukee and the Raptors who will have that size that can counter that, like that's obviously going to be like the biggest obstacle. But in terms of what the Nets did in Game 1 and how at times in Game 2 the efficiency from the perimeter wasn't there as much. Mm-hmm. Do you see with Game 3 it's going to be like the tone setter has to be them, like kind of with LeVert and Dinwiddie knocking down, because like D'Angelo Russell, he struggled in the first half of that Game 1. Like he had a very good third quarter, but in the first half he struggled. Like do you think in terms of just like the three like essential players for their nucleus, Dinwiddie, LeVert, and Russell, like who do you think kind of has to set the tone early in that Game 3?
I think it has to be two guys, and you just said LeVert and Spencer, because they created. Well, they gave the Sixers fits off the dribble, and they knocked down open 3-point shots and went, I think, 11 of 26 in the first game. Mm-hmm. So you have to make that over into the second game. They didn't, but now you have the formula to win. You know how to beat the 76ers. Knock down your 3-point shots, limit Ben Simmons, and keep Jimmy under wraps just a little tad bit. But those two guys have to come off and make shots. They have to make them fear them, because they're two-way players. They don't get the praise that they need, but they are two-way players who can hit big shots, and they did it the first game. Second game kind of wasn't there. Like you said, Russell kind of struggled too as well in the first half. Had an amazing third quarter, but he has to be. We know what he can do, but those two guys, your supporting players of D'Angelo, you have to hit your shots, and that's the formula to win. They won 11-26 the first game. They have to continue to create fits for the Sixers, and they have every opportunity to do so, especially the type of season they've had. They come to be able to this point to be even 1-on-1 with the process. It's a big accomplishment already, but those guys want to go the distance, and they can. I think they can definitely beat the 76ers in the series.
In the series?
Yeah, and it showed the first game.
It did.
In the second game was more.
This is kind of like the worst draw they could have gotten in the first round.
Exactly, and then the crazy thing about, they took Joel Embiid out of the first game. You can see his demeanor on the bench. They took Ben Simmons out of the game the first game as well. Take them out, make them quit.
That's the thing. Like Butler has 36, and it's at the end it still didn't matter. Like do you think with the Nets strategy it could be like, okay, Butler can get his, but if Embiid and Simmons don't, we're fine?
If Ben averages a triple-double or gets a triple-double, they're going to win the basketball game, because he's creating shots throughout the transition. He created shots for his players through transition into the front court. You can't let him do that. That's when he's at his best. He's going to be at his best when he has 10 rebounds, 10 assists. He's feeling it. He's feeling the vibe that you're giving him to him. He's in tune with his players. You can't allow him to do that. You can't allow him to get a rhythm. And you have to get Joe. When Joel Embiid gets mad and frustrated, he's on the bench looking at cell phones and checking messages with his other Amir Johnson. You get him to do that. His game, his mindset.
That's what we want. That's what we want. Look at the cell phone.
Look at his cell phone. That's what you want. And if you do that, you win the first game. Second game, they kind of was like, "Whoa, okay, this is Brooklyn Nets. Why they shouldn't be able to beat us?" It took a lot for them to beat them. They had to score 142 points. They cannot do that consistently throughout the series. So that's
the scary thing. That's what it took to beat Brooklyn.
Exactly. I'm glad you said that, because I was literally just about to say that.
Oh,
if it took 142 points, no, you're fine. If it took 142 points you to beat the Brooklyn Nets,
second round's not looking too good.
You might not make it out the first round.
Yeah.
You might not.
This is the thing. I'm just going to put you in a scenario. If you're the GM of the Sixers and Simmons continues to stay as just a playmaker and an open floor scorer, are you like content with that, or are you just like, this is like not good for our future in terms of if one of Harris or Butler goes?
That is a great question, because if I was a GM, like you said, I will look at what type of player that I need in my system, and I think they need a Ben Simmons,
Yeah,
who's good in transition and on the front court. Now, the game of creating his own shot will come. He's only been in the league 2-3 years. That will come. A lot of people work on that continuously throughout their career. Don't give up on a guy just because he can't create a shot. He can do so much more for your basketball team. And that's why he's at the point guard position, even at 6'10", whatever, how tall he is. But I'll keep him there. What I will do is get the type of players around him, like Jimmy, like Joel Embiid, and like Tobias Harris. Keep those guys around him, and eventually he will sprout out of his cocoon of shooting, and he's going to surprise a lot of people. But until that, then he's still a process. But you don't get rid of a type of guy like that. You don't.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying getting rid of him, but like would that like make you kind of concerned about the future?
It's a lot of people who said they should try to trade Ben Simmons away to get another player or a couple more players in there to complete the process. It's talks and men around about that.
Yeah, there is.
I
just don't know. You can't really find a guy like that, because you do want him to shoot, but like the playmaking and the open floor scoring, that's just so invaluable.
Exactly. So I mean, it will come. Like I said, first year broken foot. Second year, you had a pretty good year. Everybody started comparing them to Magic Johnson, comparing them to LeBron James.
And then in the Celtics series, Stevens just completely found the perfect game plan to go against them. That series was a revelation, because coming into that series, people really felt as though the Sixers could have gone all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals or even further.
Yeah. And the fact that Brad Stevens, I'm going to talk about Brad Stevens eventually, about how good of a coach he really is. He's a good coach. Yeah. And it shows his lineup changes. But I think if I was a GM, I keep Ben, but I put the players around him who can pick up the slack until he bursts on the scene and pulls up and shoot a jumper wide open and makes it and just smiles. That's what we're waiting for. That's what we're waiting for out of Ben. But right now, we're not gonna get that. No time soon.
Yeah. Transitioning to the Nuggets. DeMar DeRozan, LaMarcus Aldridge, they had a fantastic performance. Jamal Murray struggles in the game, and Jokic doesn't have that effective of an outing. And the one of the main things with San Antonio was their guard play with Forbes and White, and how they were just really able to kind of neutralize Jamal Murray in that type of performance. And when you and just the playoff inexperience that we were concerned about with the Nuggets. And I'm not saying like, okay, this is, gloom and doom for Denver already, because it was just one game. But we did see that in terms of if Jokic can't be the dominant scorer, at times it's going to be dependent on Jamal Murray to save the day. And that wasn't able to happen. And then with San Antonio, Aldridge and DeRozan, they really were the bright spots of the game. But with the Nuggets struggles in that first game, and also we're also going to talk about the Raptors, who they're up a lot against the Magic right now, and they had a bit of a struggle. And I mean, lost in game one with DJ Augustine hitting a big the go ahead jumper to win the go ahead 3-pointer to win the game. And dealing with those two teams, and you can start with either one you want to. Which like team's game one struggles kind of concern you the most?
I think it would be the number 2 seed Denver Nuggets, to be honest. But in the Raptors are not far off either, because I was super surprised on how they couldn't gain separation from the Magic at all. But I'll start with the Nuggets. I thought that we saw again the inconsistencies of Jamal Murray and how teams play him and strategize against him. And then, like you said, Jokic, he had 14 rebounds and dished out 14 assists, but he, took 9 shots, made 4, he was limited to 10 points. So if your backup guy is not making points, or your starting guy is not making points, you're going to lose to a more talented, not even more talented, well-oiled machine of a team that's led by the great White Snowman. So it's going to be like that. You have to make your shots. And you're the main guy. You're the head guy. Murray's the main guy. And then Jokic comes out and finishes off. He did have a double-double. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from him, but and they have. And you look at it on paper, Denver Nuggets have way more talent than the Spurs, even with DeMar DeRozan. And I hope DeMar can keep this up. Now that he's with a new team, we've seen the postseason. I'm going to talk about his homie Kyle Lowry in a minute. He was non-existent as well in the first game because he had no points.
In 33 minutes.
In 33 minutes. Kid you not. That should have been a headline. Lowry didn't score any. Should have been a headline. But, I mean, you look at it. I mean, DeMar had a decent game, but if the Denver Nuggets, who was my team, I thought they were going to either go second, third round. Now it's looking like they might not even go out the first round. So fix it. I think Murray comes back and he's more. I think this is the game. He's going to pull a Ben Simmons. This is a game he's going to show why he should be considered top 20 at least. Top 20 guard in the league at least. Hopefully he does that because I mean, they're shutting you down. You're not going to be able to do anything for your team. But I was super surprised. And Toronto Raptors.
Oh, you're no Toronto. I was going to talk about it. Like one thing that stood out to me was with San Antonio was 2/3 of their attempts came from the mid range in game one, and that's the highest by any team this season. And it's so rare to see a strategy like that win in today's game. And the fact that and the fact that look, even though they don't have a great perimeter shooters, they have two guys who can get buckets at any time in Aldridge and DeRozan. Does the fact that like that can still work and the Spurs kind of have an offensive like strategy that's kind of like against the grain, like does that surprise you or is that just something that you feel as though they can kind of acquiesce to any style in a playoff matchup because of their experience?
I don't think that's even the case because we know how experienced the Spurs are individually and as a team, but I think the most difficult thing and the most highlighted thing that should be Nuggets only made 42% of their shots, 21% from 3-point range, and they had missed 8 free throws.
Yeah.
And then they had a single transitional basket. That's the game right there. 8 free throws. Your percentage from the field is terrible. Your 3-point percentage is terrible. You had no transitional basketball. That I don't care what team you play, experience or no experience, that's going to get you beat.
Yeah. The Spurs are currently up by 10 with a minute left in the second.
Exactly. I mean, experience does play a role, but if you play the game like you're supposed to, experience doesn't mean squat.
Yeah.
Experience is only valuable when it's time. It's at the tail end of the game,
But you need go-to guys who can get you buckets, and I feel like with Denver, it's like outside of Jokic, Jamal Murray is that primary guy, and he was really shaky.
Really, really shaky. And Jokic was shaky too. But he still had 14 assists, 10 rebounds. So you got to take the good and the bad ugly. But that stat right there, that line right there, 42% from the field, 21% from the 3-point line, missed 8 free throws, had no transitional basketball scoring. That'll get you beat.
Yeah.
But the Spurs are so diligent and so well taught and trained and teamed and coached that they will do the little things that will make you win. On paper, they should have not won at all. Even with DeMar DeRozan, even with the experience they have, there is no way they should have beat the Denver Nuggets, the number 2 seeded team in the West. No way.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And so with the Raptors, Lowry obviously had 0 points. I mean, I don't even know any other way to describe it. He just had 0 points. He didn't have a game. And then, Leonard has a really good game, misses the go-ahead 3. And I believe Orlando was shooting 48% from 3. And Augustine had a really good game, 25 points. Terrence Ross, who used to play for Toronto, had a really good game off the bench. And there's always been the thing of the playoff horrors constantly surrounding Toronto. But when you have a guy like Kawhi who's a closer and has championship, caliber, that can be something that is kind of assuring that, okay, this could be different. But they're like, I believe 1-9 in game one. So they just have a history of that being a problem. They were down, I believe, as much by 16 in the second. So even with that, are there major concerns for you with the Raptors in terms of that aspect as well?
No, because the shot that DJ, made.
Gasol gave him a lot of space with that shot too.
He said it was miscommunication with him and
Leonard.
Kawhi.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, given it plays into basketball, but I think if their assignment there'll be a different story. But I am concerned of why they couldn't pull away from Orlando Magic, knowing that they've beaten better teams than this in the regular season, but it's always different in the playoffs and the postseason. But I'm not to a point where I'm is alerted right now because it's only the first game, and but the first game does kind of like gain that momentum and set the stage and set that on how the series could go. But I think they'll bounce back. I'm not worried, but I'm just kind of like, it's just like they could pull it. Why they couldn't pull away in the first game? It's a lot of stuff that goes into that.
And this is the thing. Crazy things happen in game one. I remember when the Pacers beat the Cavs by 18 in game one last year, and
this is true.
Yeah, and even the Celtics going up 2-0 against Cleveland and winning convincingly in game one against Cleveland. It's just, I'm not saying like a game one doesn't matter, but a lot of times it can be kind of like playing chess, and you're just trying to see what moves the other team is going to make, just like kind of adjust to them.
And I definitely think it's an eye opener for the Raptors and the Raptors fans. Like we are human after all, but now we have to crank it up, and we have to play Toronto Raptors basketball. And I look to see Kawhi to go off the second game, deep on backcourt and the front court. I look to see him go ham. And I ain't talking, I know playing right there.
Well, do you want to start with the you want to talk about the Clippers or the Rockets?
Let's talk
I guess we have to talk about the Clippers. Yeah, I guess we have to, because they had the largest comeback in playoff history, 31 points.
31.
Lou Williams has a phenomenal game. Patrick Beverley is playing just gritty, tenacious defense. And when Cousins goes out and they bring Bogut in, he really struggles against Montrezl Harrell and Kevon Looney, who was kind of the bright spot for their bigs, had 19 points and 9 rebounds. Steph had 29. KD had 21 and was fouled out with about 2 minutes left in the game. But this is the thing with the Clippers. This is a gritty team. They Landry Shamet and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander are very talented young guards, and just a meltdown like this is just, even with the fact that Cousins goes out and KD gets fouled out, there's no way we think this is possible. So with the Clippers' just astonishing comeback and just how gritty their defense is, and this is just, Lou Williams was talking about, this is just it's the team that they are. What were your thoughts on it?
My thoughts were, here's an aggressive team, gritty team, like you said, that's finally seeing how good they can be as a basketball team. And I think it's two ways you could beat Golden State Warriors: outshoot them and play aggressive. A lot of teams cannot continue to play aggressive and keep that type of feel up throughout a series. And I think the Clippers can. They're led by Patrick Beverley, who's the most aggressive player in the league. As you can see, both him and Kevin Durant and him himself getting thrown out the first game. And this game, he was just there. His embodiment of a player. He reminds me of a Gary Payton, not as talented, but he reminds me of that grit, get in the players' heads, get in your face. I'm going to show you I'm not afraid of you. First team defense for a reason. And he showed
kind of like a Tony Allen.
Exact. Tony Allen was definitely a good defensive player with the Celtics and the Grizzlies. He was a phenomenal defensive player, first team actually. And you want those type of players. And in my head, when I saw it, I was like, okay, can they continue this up? Because Lou went off. Lou went off.
Six man like Lou will.
Lou went off, man. Lou went off. And I don't want.
I always think of six man when I see him.
Yeah, me too. like a lube. Like I'm afraid they're gonna run out of gas because it takes a lot to be aggressive with a team that has so many weapons, and you have to make them in that aggressiveness. You make them make mistakes in turnovers. I think they had a bunch of turnovers in the second half, especially from Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. Both.
That's always their kryptonite.
Exactly. So you get them off. You get Steph making mistakes. Make the best thing you can do for Steph, make Steph comfortable. You don't want him to get hot, make him comfortable. Because when he's hot, he's gonna make shots and he'll get to a point
where when he gets comfortable, he can become very careless with the ball.
Yes.
As we've seen in the past. You want to lull him, kind of lull him to that state.
Mm-hmm. Because he has his days where he starts off slow. Be aware of that game. If he starts slow, he's going to end hot. It's rare that he starts slow and doesn't end hot. I forgot what game that was, but Clay stepped up and Clay went off as well. So you be aware of those games. If Steph is hot the first half, then you have a chance. I know
if Steph has 7 points at halftime, we can
because he's gonna come out because they're a great third quarter basketball team. Best third quarter basketball team ever. But if he's hot and he comes in the second half and he's gonna get comfortable, then he's gonna spread the wealth. He's gonna pass more, he's gonna dribble more. But when he's hot and when he starts off slow, he's just gonna shoot. He's not gonna dribble, he's gonna shoot. He's gonna shoot himself out of it. So if he's hot, you got a chance in the second half. If he's not, Steph is gonna shoot your eyes out. But that's kind of weird. That's kind of a weird, formula to beat them. But the more aggressive you is, there's two ways to beat them: be aggressive or outshoot them.
Yeah,
they're not going to outshoot them. They're not going to outshoot them, not at all. But if you be aggressive and make them make mistakes, then you're gonna have the biggest comeback in NBA history.
And is that because there's a lot of in terms of the psyche of a comeback, in terms of the team that's leading and in terms of the team that's coming back, there's a lot that goes into that. Do you feel as though it was just for Golden State, it was just kind of a lack of respect for the Clippers' resolve to come back, or do you think it was more so the Clippers just had a greater amount of resolve and obviously forcing the turnovers and having the defensive resilience, and in addition to Lou Williams having a really good game?
It's definitely because I'm going to talk about this with the Utah and the Rockets game, and then the Celtics game as well. I probably got them mixed up, but I'm going to talk about that later about how they stop them on defense, and if you don't score on your end, then you're going to lose because you're playing good defense. Eventually, they're going to start shooting and making baskets. But this is the best thing that the Clippers did that game. They were playing great defense, and Lou Williams was shooting the lights out the court. He was shutting it down like Beyonce in the Super Bowl. Shut all the lights out. That's how good he was shooting. That's how good he was that second game. And he was playing great defense. The more you get KD talking, the more he's going to get outside his game. If KD's quiet, it's crazy how I watch these players. He's a reaper. The more quiet he is, the more it focuses. If you get him to talking, you get him clapping, you get him outside his character, he's going to make bad mistakes. He's going to do turnovers like he did the second game. Great. Hats off to Patrick Beverly. Same thing with Steph Curry. So they played a great second game. There are way more games to be played. Continue that. If they can't continue that success the next two games, then they lose the series. But if they continue that success in the next two games, they win the series. Mark my words.
What do you envision happening the rest of the do you think they'll just kind of cruise, or kind of have a resounding comeback Warriors statement game in Game 3?
They have to,
because they're obviously great after losses or embarrassing losses historically. But obviously, you can't just base things on the historics and histrionics.
Yes, you can. That's.
Yeah. Obviously,
you've seen what the Warriors have done after a terrible game.
If we're based on the past, they should go on and win this in 5.
Yeah, based on the past, of course.
Yeah.
But I don't think they have met an aggressive team like this
since maybe Memphis in 2015.
Maybe, perhaps.
Yeah.
because even the Cavaliers wasn't aggressive with them. They just played. They just
OKC was.
Things have fun. OKC was, but they ran out of gas.
Mm-hmm.
Houston Rockets, they just outscored them. So,
yeah, if the Warriors had an option of a Western Conference Finals, it would be a team like the Rockets compared to OKC, because OKC would just they play them so aggressively.
Super aggressive.
Yeah.
And OKC might not make it out of
first round.
Trailblazers.
Enes Kanter.
Oh no. Look, man. Damian Lillard.
And any quick thoughts on that one for the Rockets? Because I mean, Damian Lillard was phenomenal, and McCollum as well, and Kanter, I believe had a double, and George didn't look. He did not look himself in that game.
He didn't. I'm just gonna say this before we transition.
Okay.
It's time for the Trailblazers
to
reemerge. It's time. How many years they've been doing this? Make it to the playoffs and then it gets swatted away. It is time.
It's time.
It's time. What was my song last year? They need more? It's time. It's time for the Trailblazers.
It's amazing. It's amazing how you do this. You find a mantra for each playoff run. Last year it was they need more, and now it's time. I like this.
How many times have you seen the Trailblazers like cook? Oh, yeah. I mean, literally, Damian Lillard cooking, and then they just.
I'm just getting the flashbacks of his game winner over Dwight Howard when they beat the Rockets. That's the only thing I can think.
At every angle, wow! At every angle,
yeah.
It was beautiful. Angle. Yeah. At every angle, it was beautiful. From the back, it was just a fluent shot, man. It is time for them. It has to be. And what better?
I mean, like what stood out to you in terms of what OKC like? Because obviously the offensive depth and the shooting that's always been like one of my biggest concerns with the team. Because if George isn't like playing at an MVP level, they're kind of average offensively.
Mm-hmm. And that's you hit the nail on the coffin. Like that's it right there. Yeah. Because they always play pretty good defense. And
I wonder if that's going to be like the Achilles heel, because it's like, can you really expect George to be like that almost every game?
Every game, yeah. And what I like the most about what Westbrook is doing, he's hitting big shots, but he's trusting Paul more.
That's different.
I forgot what game that was. When Paul hit the game winner.
Rockets.
I don't know if that was first game. Yeah, that was the game before the playoffs. And he passed it. He looked like he was about to shoot it again because he was open a little bit.
I had to rewind that like 3 times. I was like, did he really just pass that?
Passed the game winning shot and Paul sinked it. It was like crazy. But now, I mean, Paul, it's the first game.
Yeah.
So they'll be fine. I think it's going to be a good series, though. It's really going to be.
Who do you like in the series?
Don't.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I forgot. This was your finals pick. I'm still holding you to it.
Yeah.
Milwaukee.
I said OKC in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hold it. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Is it too
late? I haven't even said. So we're officially gonna lock in our picks tonight. We're officially gonna lock our.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll probably change it, but we'll see.
You're gonna laugh at me, but I'm gonna say Golden State and the Toronto Raptors. Okay, moving on.
Toronto Raptors. That's not a bad pick, man. That's not a bad pick.
I feel a lot better about it compared. I mean, just in terms, and the reason I'm giving a slight edge over Milwaukee just because of the fact that I feel like if Kawhi plays at the level he's constantly played at in the postseason, it's just a complete difference maker that they've never really had in their like franchise history.
Right.
And maybe I'm banking too much on Kawhi, but I just feel as though in a Toronto Milwaukee Eastern Conference Finals, I just trust Kawhi a little more.
Yeah, he's a game changer.
Yeah.
And I think if he would never went down in that 1 year in series, I think they would have swept the Houston Rockets. But he got hurt. And I think they could have beat they definitely could have beat the Warriors if he was still healthy.
Yeah. Transitioning to Houston, they had won 122-90 against Utah. Harden had 29 points and 10 assists, and their entire starting lineup had 10 points. Gordon had 17, Capella 16, Paul 14, and Tucker 11. Gobert had 22 points and 12 rebounds. But this was, I mean, Mitchell had 19 points, but didn't have an assist, which is, obviously a big, he had an okay offensive night, but not any assists. So in terms of just the Rockets starting lineup efficiency and obviously what Harden was able to do, this is the rematch of the Western Conference semis last year, and you talked about how with what you saw from Utah in that series, it kind of changed what you thought about them coming into this season. So what were your thoughts on that game? Because it almost seemed like deja vu from the last time we saw them.
True. I thought the game plan they had was kind of like a little childish, taking the left away. It worked a little bit, but James Harden is such an offensive mindset, an offensive groove that he's going to adjust, which he did. He had 29 points, led the team in scoring and assists, I believe. But you have to find another way to take him out of the game. But you're not going to really stop James Harden. James Harden's going to have to stop himself. He's going to have to have a shooting slump, like the 27 consecutive threes type of night. But it's too early for that. It's too early for him not to make shots this early on in the playoffs. But I thought what was the game changer? They had a lot of stops in the third quarter, but they didn't make any buckets on their end in the front court, because they were stopping the Rockets in the third quarter, but they couldn't capitalize on what they were doing. So it's a lot that's playing. They're gonna have to adjust a little more. You're gonna have to adjust. You have to hit the shots. Mm-hmm. I think that was the biggest thing. They weren't down by much. I think it was just the opportunities where they were stopping them, and then the Rockets are going on a run led by James Harden, and your momentum is gone because you didn't start making shots. You weren't creating momentum for yourself. So, and then not having an assist from what's his name? What's his name?
Mitchell.
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell.
Why
his name? My brain just turns off like I don't know the names. Donovan Mitchell, and I knew that name. He's going to have a better performance because he's a leader. Rubio is old. Rubio's trying to take the love away from him. I saw a couple of clips. I didn't watch the entire game. I just saw a couple
when he was
like, yo, that's
guarding behind.
Yeah,
was when he was.
I was like, yo, that's terrible defense.
Yeah. I'm gonna stand behind you.
Like, he can't step back and shoot the other way. You got to have a different way to play defense against James, because that's not it. Because he adjusted well, and he adjusted his teammates to be in the right position so he can, still do what James Harden does. It's too early for him to have, missed shots. Too early in the series. So you have to find a different way to play him. It's going to be extremely hard to do so. But you got to make your buckets.
Follow Max is nice. Follow Max is nice if you want to see an adaptation of Ricky Rubio's defense on James Harden on Instagram. It's hilarious. But with Derek Favors, he had 13 points. And Utah, they go 7 for 27 on threes, and that's and also in addition to 18 turnovers. In terms of,
he had 5 of them.
Yeah. And in terms of that, with the turnovers and then the 7 for 27 on threes, obviously something has to give. But like, which one do you think could be like a reoccurring issue in terms of compared to? I don't see them having that bad of an inefficient shooting night, or do you think the turnovers could kind of be their biggest issue against Houston?
I think
because Houston's going to play with a lot of pace.
Exactly, 18 turnovers in the first game. I mean, that set the tone of what type of offense you're going to have. And then, I mean, you can correct the 7 for 27 3-pointers. You can correct that. You can mix up the offense, get some different plays in, and get to the rim, and that kind of switch that up. But if you have 18 turnovers, you're turning the ball over, then that's going to be you're going to lose like you did. So I think they're gonna have times where they're going to be forcing the ball a lot. Right. Because, like you said, they're going to have a lot of bigs in there. It's going to be a different looks for them. They're going to be forcing it to try to, get out the sun. Because if you go 7 for 27, then what else you going to do? Try to get to the basket. You try to do a little pick and roll that can create more turnovers than you create in baskets, and that's what they did in the first game. But 5 turnovers by your lead guy alone, that should tell you something. They have to refocus. They have to, have to come back for the next game. But I like the way the Houston Rockets did. They're all starting to hit 5 players at over 10 points. That should tell you something. Yeah. Everybody's getting involved in the offense.
And at the end of the day,
ball out, getting everybody involved.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like obviously, like guys like Daniel House, Austin Rivers, like role player type guys, they're important. But at the end of the day, do you feel as though if Houston's gonna go like very far or get past Golden State in the second round, like it's just gonna almost be like last year, where it's gonna have to come down to Chris Paul's health and how efficient that their starting 5 lineup can be?
It's going to come down to if they make the shots.
Right.
Because when Chris went down, they still had opportunities to win that basketball game, but they shot themselves out of it. Now, if you're going to shoot as much as the Rockets shoot, you have to make them. And they've been doing that here lately. But I think that's the biggest thing. I think Chris Paul healthy is going to be a big impact for them. But if they make their shots and the bench players make their shots like they had players last year going up to that series, because that was a good series, to be honest. And I thought the Rockets would pull it off with that 27 consecutive. At some point, okay.
Sam, I'm just going to say this. At some point in the future, we're just going to have to do a podcast just talking about literally, I'm not being serious, just literally talking about Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals. I mean, just from top to bottom, like, what were your thoughts? When did you think that the streak was going to start? Because I mean, that game is still just one of the most perplexing games I think I've ever seen.
I think they just got a record again for most 3 points made this season, and all I can think about is Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals of the 27 consecutive 3 points. They're going to shoot themselves into a game. They will shoot themselves out of the game. At some point, I reiterate this every time we talk about this. At some point, when do you say, "Hey,
let's go inside"?
Drive the ball. At some point, you have to say that. At some point, time out. Like, all right,
let's go for an isolation,
working, guys. Yeah, let's do something different. Anybody got any ideas? Like, at some point, as a head coach, you see your team.
That's the point where I expect Daryl Morey to just take the clipboard from Mike D'Antoni and be like, "I'm coming in for this play."
Right. I'm the captain now. Do something, because if I was the head coach, I would tell you, "Yo, stop shooting threes. Drive. I would draw up any play, just any."
And I think this, honestly, I really think as though D'Antoni couldn't believe what he was. He was just like, Harden's gonna knock down at least one of these. It's not gonna keep happening. I mean, and then it keeps happening.
Yeah.
I mean, at least after 10, I would think, okay, all right, guys, that's enough. We were the best 3-point shooting team. Not tonight.
Not tonight. At some point, like after, let's say number 18, like, all right, y'all. Woo! So next person who shoot it, like let's pick the next person who shoot. Okay, James, you missed like 9 tonight, so you ain't gonna shoot. Trevor, you missed probably 3. Eric, you missed about 5. PJ, you take it. Put him in a corner. If he misses it, we're gonna drive to the hole. Like at some point, if I was the head coach, I was talking to my team, "Yo, do not shoot another 3. No more 3s. I know that's our offense. Let's do something different." That should tell you what type of coach he is. I mean,
I'll tell you what.
I don't think he's a good coach.
As long as Chris Paul's on the floor, that's never going to happen again. It's never going to happen again. Chris Paul's going to be like, I'm going to have an isolation possession. There's going to be no more threes.
Right. I'm about to shoot a jump shot. I'm going to dribble, pick and roll, pull up inside the arc.
Yeah.
Make it.
Yeah. Transitioning to the Celtics, they had a 10-point win against the Pacers and outscored Indiana by 17 in the second half. And Kyrie and Marcus Morris had 20 points, and Jason Tatum had 15, and Corey Joseph only had 14 points, and Bogdanovic was the only starter for Indiana to be in double figures. And this was just a very, like we were talking about how the Sixers were scoring like 140 plus. And these two teams shoot under 40% for the game. And I think Boston hit only 36% from three and had 20 turnovers. Indiana 33% of their shots, and then turn it over 13 times. And so I think one of the biggest losses for the postseason is Marcus Smart, because obviously, like, he doesn't have the offensive impact, but defensively, how tenacious he is and just the hustle plays that he makes are just invaluable. But with how Boston was able to have a really good, impressive second half and kind of stymie the Pacers' offense in the second half as well. What were your overall thoughts on
that? My hat's off to Stevens, just because the first 4 minutes of the game, literally the first 4 minutes of the game, they had 4 turnovers. And then I think he put in Morris and Hayward. Shout out to my cousin. That's not really my cousin. And, I mean, that paid off. Just that simple move I put in Morris in that paid off. He went 3 or 4, including 2 3-pointers, scoring 12 points. It's those type of things when you see as a coach, okay, something's not working, let's do this. It was that simple by just knowing your players, knowing what type of field your team has, who goes with who. That's a head coach. That paid off. Now, Pacers defense still played great basketball.
Yeah.
They limited them to 84 points.
That's
they
unheard
just wasn't
of.
knocking their buckets down. That's all it was. They weren't knocking their buckets down. That's what I was saying. I was going to talk about it later. They played great defense. 84 points. I think the Celtics average at least 101 points a game.
Mm-hmm.
So it leads to a point where, okay, I'm playing great defense, but we're not knocking our shots down. We're still going to lose. It has to be that balance. So, man, hats off to him. But hats off to Brad Stevens, though. That's a coach. That's what you look for in a coach. Just making those sort of moves, putting the right players in there. And Morris did have a great game. He didn't have a big game, but he had an impactful game that got them there. And then Kyrie kind of had that Mamba mentality taking over. He said he wanted to be the head of the snake. And, you know, that's what he was.
Yeah.
That's what type of – you have to be a leader. Him and Hayward not being able to be in the playoffs. His first playoffs is, 2017?
Mm-hmm.
Hurt all last year. Hayward hurt all last year. Got their first fill. Limited.
I don't think anybody's happier to be back in the postseason than Kyrie, or Kawhi.
Most def. I think Kyrie. Well, not both of them are hurt, but Kyrie was been more successful playoffs, I would say, than Kawhi.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. No. Maybe. No.
It had a more successful.
Yeah, like team wise.
Oh, team-wise, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Spurs has been consistent, but like the last couple of years,
it's been a while.
Deep. Yeah, they haven't been really deep since they lost to the Heat. Yeah. But the Hats, Pacers, great defense. They just don't have Victor Oladipo to make those shots for them.
Yeah, and looking at the overall sequence of this series, I mean the Pacers, I think 57% from the free throw line. Boston out rebounded them 55 to 42. And going ahead, like, do you feel as though that the biggest advantage will be the rebounding for Boston, or do you see Indiana kind of in game 2 knocking down more shots and still having like kind of a stymieing type defense?
I think game 2, I think Tatum will be more involved in the offense. Okay. To be honest, I think those guys, this is the first real playoff game with everybody there. Now we'll see how we can be able to win. Who needs the ball in their hands? I think Tatum will get more chances and more shots. I do think the Pacers will still play aggressive defense, but they still won't have enough on the front court side to go past 70, not even 74 points, but outscore the Celtics. But because even in their dry spells, Celtics still had the opportunity to win and make shots, even though they were playing great defense. But the Pacers did not, because they don't have that type of player, because he's out for the season. So It's going to be extremely hard to kind of balance that out with not having a go-to guy like Victor Oladipo on the court with you. So it shows how great defense they are, great defense they have on the backcourt, but you still need that offensive presence on the front court to kind of sustain you and balance you out. But then they failed 10 points, because if this was any other team, the Celtics would have definitely lost.
Yeah.
Definitely lost.
And that's the concerning thing, because I think going ahead, if Boston is able to advance, like, you can't afford to do that against Milwaukee.
Nope.
Like Milwaukee, they're going to score a ton. If you have 84, they're going to have like 104. Like, it's not going to be it's not going to be that type of slow performance. But is there do you see any like what's the biggest bright spot for Boston, like that you're seeing for this series? Like, do you feel as though Kyrie is just going to have to play at an MVP level, or do you see a Hayward, or which of the starting five do you see kind of like outside of Kyrie having to have like the biggest impact for them to kind of be a more convincing contender?
Every last one of them, man. Not an individual. This has to be a team effort, because they've been playing individual basketball for the entire year. So this is the time. You can't wait to the last minute to figure it out as a team. And I've been preaching and ranting on it for multiple podcasts now, that then you figure it out, or they're gonna lose. And just showing now they still haven't figured it out. Kyrie had to step up and finish. Nobody else stepped up at all. Morris had great minutes. Tatum kind of was sluggish. Smart was playing defense. We already know that. Rozier was kind of, played his part, but everybody has to be on a collective mindset that, okay, this is what we want to do. And they still haven't figured it out as a team. Now, Brad Stevens is doing a great job of switching people out and putting people in there in the lineup who knows how to play together. And it showed in the first 4 minutes of the basketball game that he knows his basketball players. But the basketball players don't know their basketball players. The Salisbury tastes like Salisbury. They don't know that yet. They don't know that, Wellington. They don't know what Salisbury tastes like Salisbury. They don't know that. But it's just certain things you have to know about your teammates and know everyone's weaknesses and strengths.
How much does I know like it's it's hard to look forward, but how much does Marcus Smart's absence do you feel as though could possibly hurt them in the next series if they're able to advance?
We've talked about last year about what players they need to sign back, and the one person I said they need to sign back was Marcus Smart because of his defense. That should tell you something right there. It's very impactful on how he plays defense. He's that grimy. He's Patrick Beverly on the Celtics. He's Gary Payton on the Celtics. He's not going to give you big buckets, but he's going to give you his all on the defense, on the backcourt. That's what you need the most. That's his role. So if you don't have your greatest defensive threat, then it's gonna show some things. It's gonna have the people to fill the next man up. We say this in football, the next man up. So
right.
I don't see a great defensive guy on the Celtics bigger than Marcus Smart.
Yeah,
and that's sad. Yeah, without him, it's going to be a struggle. Definitely a struggle. They're gonna have to shoot. They're gonna have to shoot the lights out.
Yeah. Any more thoughts for the postseason? I know Thunder Blazers tonight. Any thoughts about that game, or just going forward? Any other things standing out to you?
Thunder, wake up, Russ. Russell has to wake up.
Yeah.
Russell has to be aggressive.
You think he has to be more assertive in this game?
Yes, he has to be more assertive. Trust Paul, but be more assertive. He has to take over the game, but know what shot needs to be dished out to everybody else. But he has to take over the game because Paul is going to be laid back. Paul's a laid back guy. Russ is the aggressor. I didn't see any aggression. He tried to get into Damian Lillard in the head, but it didn't work. Try something different. Be the aggressor. That's the one thing I'm looking for OKC if Russ is going to come out aggressive.
Yeah.
Especially with that pick and roll.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that wraps it up for tonight. I'm your host, Wellington Burns, along with my counterpart, Savon Morris. This has been Full Scope. See you later. We'll get a new intro, too.